Hello, Mayor Angel Albanese here, and I'm joined today with Captain Chris Lott, and we're here to talk about motorized bicycles and scooters and the ordinance that we have in place. Welcome.
Good to see you, Mayor.
How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good, good. So why don't we just get right into it? So what led to the creation of this ordinance?
So probably over the last 18 to 24 months, we've seen an increase in the amount of electric bicycles and electric two-wheeled vehicles that we've seen on the streets here in Clark. And it's not just in Clark, it's around the state of New Jersey and around the country. You know, different companies have been coming out with different models of these. We've seen them in the cities, in Elizabeth and in Newark have put in different types of motorized scooters from companies that look to make money off them. So just the increase in the technology over the last couple of years, we've seen more and more of these electric vehicles on our streets, and we decided that for the motoring public and for our residents' safety, it would be a good idea to adopt an ordinance that allows us to regulate how these are ridden on our streets and in some of the more heavily trafficked areas of town that are private property.
Can you tell us what types of vehicles are covered by this ordinance?
Sure. So the best way to think of this is that there are two types of vehicles that are covered under this ordinance. There's low-speed electric vehicles, which have pedals, and there's higher-speed electric vehicles, which do not have pedals. So what does a low-speed scooter look like? Basically, there's two classes of them, and without getting too technical into how fast they can go, they look like a bicycle. They have a set of pedals on them. They have an electric helper motor, and they should be thought of as a bicycle. They follow bicycle laws, and anyone who is riding them should follow the laws of the road when it comes to bicycles.
Mm-hmm. So the pedals are the differentiating factor.
Yes, yes. Now within the low-speed vehicles, there's a separate component to it, which is a scooter. And a scooter looks like a scooter. You know, it's easy to recognize. It's an electric scooter, just like a Razor scooter that you would use with your foot. You're able to pedal it with your foot, or you're able to stand on the board, and that is considered a low-speed electric vehicle. So you have your two classes of motorized bicycles, which have pedals, and the scooter with the flat floorboard on it, and those should be thought of, by riders and by parents and people who are looking to purchase them as a bicycle. The second class are high-speed electric vehicles, and these are essentially looked upon as mopeds or motorcycles, and these do not have pedals, and these are the ones that I would say in town we have the most serious issues with, because I think that parents and people buying them believe that they can be treated as a bicycle, but they're not. They are mopeds, and they should be looked upon as a moped. It's something that you would need, we'll get into this a little bit later on, a license to have. You need to have insurance on it. It needs to have a plate, and it's subject to all the motor vehicle laws that mopeds and motor vehicles are subject to. Almost like driving a car.
When you say there are serious issues, I assume you're talking about the dangers involved.
Yes.
With serious issues.
Yes. I mean, with the amount of traffic that's in town, not just on our main roadways, but even on our side streets, there are a lot of vehicles that are being driven through town on a daily basis. And not that we have seen a large number of accidents with these type of vehicles, but we want to make sure that we adopt regulations that will keep that from happening before it becomes an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think part of it is that, when you're driving too, you're focusing on the road, and it's something that's unexpected.
Yeah, they're very difficult to see.
We already see that pedestrians are unexpected in town.
Mm-hmm.
When you're crossing the street, you really need to be aware of what's going on and be defensive walking, I'll call it that.
Yeah, for sure.
Being a walker or a runner. But can you talk about how the motorized bicycle or scooter is compliant? What do they need to have?
Okay, so let's look at the ones that have pedals first. So again, we call them low-speed electric vehicles. They either have pedals or they're the type of scooter that you stand on. They should have a sticker on them, and the sticker should tell you what class of vehicle that it is. right? And again, those are bicycles, and just like a 10-year-old could ride a regular pedal-powered, mechanically powered bicycle, a 10 or 11-year-old, 12-year-old could ride a low-speed electric vehicle, right? The ones that do not have pedals, those are the ones that we see, you know, a little bit less frequently in town, but we have more issues with because they are very high speed. If it doesn't have pedals, essentially, it's a moped. So if you purchase this for your 12-year-old or 10-year-old or your 14-year-old, you bought them a moped. It has an electric motor on it, but it's no different than a gas moped. And just like a gas moped, it needs to have, the person driving it needs to have a helmet. They need to, if they do not have a driver's license, they need to have a moped license issued by the Motor Vehicle Commission. They need to have insurance on it. They need to have a plate on it. And if those vehicles are being ridden and the person riding them doesn't have insurance or a plate on it, or it's being ridden without a helmet, they are subject to impoundment just like a motor vehicle is, right? And then to get them out of the impoundment yard, you would have to have proof that they are insured and that they are registered with the state and it has a plate on it. So it could be quite a process. And a lot of the ones that I've seen, you know, just driving my own personal car around, a lot of them don't have plates on them. And I think that the parents don't understand that that is a motor vehicle. Essentially, if your kid is 12 years old and they're riding that, you essentially bought them a moped.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned 12-year-olds and different age groups. So what are the age restrictions on all of these vehicles?
Okay, so the bicycle, the ones with pedals we kind of touched upon already, it defaults to the bicycle laws. So if you think that your child or you are ready to ride a bicycle, they can ride one of the electric powered bicycles. If it doesn't have pedals and it falls into that high speed class, that is something that, again, you need to be 15. Because at 15 you can get a moped license. So 15 to 16 you can have your moped license. Say you didn't get a driver's license, you can have a moped license all the way up throughout your adult life. Once you get a driver's license, you then don't need the moped license anymore. So you need to ride those, you either need a moped license or a driver's license.
Okay, so if you're below the driving age, then you get the moped license once you're 15. So no one under 15 on the mopeds.
Yes.
Very good. Now, I guess we talked about briefly the license and registration requirements,
Yes.
insurance. Let's talk about helmets. When are helmets required for the different bicycles or the motorized vehicles?
So this is an area of the ordinance that's a little bit more restrictive from the state statute. So bicycle helmets are required for anyone under 17. Our statute, by state statute. Our ordinance, we added in there that we want anyone who is riding one of these vehicles in town to be equipped with a helmet, whether it's a low-speed electric vehicle or a high-speed electric vehicle. Again, the high-speed electric vehicles, that's a moped. That falls back on the motorcycle helmet laws, which everyone in New Jersey who rides a moped or a motorcycle is required to wear a helmet. So once you get into the high speed, you, no matter what, are required to have a helmet on. But even on the low speeds, we have it in there. Regardless of age, you're required to wear a helmet when you're in the township of Clark.
So you've talked about low speed and high speed. Can you define that, what the speed is?
So I would direct parents to the ordinance to read the ordinance and look at the paperwork for what it is that they purchased. The issue with these devices is that every company makes their own model of it. And what they made last week gets modified this week into a new model year, or they come out with a different model. And they should look at the ordinance and see where what they purchased or what they're looking at falls into. Because what they made last week is going to be different. And if it's 2 miles an hour different, it might make a difference into what class it falls in. So rather than going into the specifics of it, I would direct them to look at what they're looking at, look at what they're going to buy, look at the ordinance, and see where it falls in. If they have questions about it, they can always come down and speak with one of our traffic officers, one of our police officers, one of the road sergeants, and they could take a look at it and give them an idea of what we believe it would fall into.
I just think in general it's a good idea to think about, if you're going to purchase something like this, how do you want it to be used?
Yes.
That's really important in an environment, in a township, on the streets, etc. So is there anything else that we need to know about how this ordinance changes the way motorized bicycles and scooters are used? Can you go on the streets? Can you go on the roads? What properties are involved?
There's state laws regarding how bicycles and how mopeds are to be ridden. The ordinance, in essence, mirrors the state statutes. So if you are riding a low-speed motorized bicycle or a scooter, you should follow the rules of the road for bicycles. So the ordinance codifies some of those rules, such as riding single file, staying to the right, into an ordinance for the township. So it's not more restrictive in the state statute in that regard.
Okay.
Where it becomes more, or where the state statute allows us to adopt ordinances for the town is in terms of sidewalks. So we limited high-speed vehicles, high-speed electric vehicles, from being ridden on the sidewalks. So if you look at the ordinance, there's section A, which is the definitions. There's subsection A, which is low-speed vehicles. And then there's another subsection, which is the high-speed vehicles. Those ones that fall under the high-speed vehicles, we limited from being ridden on the sidewalks. We also limited all of these vehicles from being ridden on any property that is owned by the Township of Clark. So that would be any municipal property and any school property. So low-speed vehicles, whether it's in subsection A or subsection B, high-speed vehicles, they cannot be ridden on township property. The idea behind that is...
So that includes all the parks as well?
So it does not include the parks because the parks are county property. So it's
okay.
Any property that's owned by the township. So it doesn't include Oak Ridge and Esposito, which are the two county properties within the township.
But other than that, our other parks?
Other parks, yes. So the pit, the playground here next to the next to the municipal building,
Navarchick Park.
Navarchick Park, those would all be included on it because they are owned by the township. Now the idea behind that is to keep areas that are high traffic, keep these vehicles out of areas that have high traffic, right? Because they're difficult to see, because they're difficult to hear, we want to make sure that our youths that are riding them are not in areas where you have lots of cars coming in and out, like our schools, like our municipal building. And another area that we are adding into the ordinance is to have this prohibition on private properties. So there's a section of the ordinance that allows private property owners to adopt a resolution with the township and prohibit these vehicles, the low-speed vehicle, electric vehicles and the high-speed electric vehicles, from their grounds. So the township is going to be approaching some of the larger property owners and some of the more busy properties in town, such as Clark Commons, ShopRite, Target, the new Starbucks, anything around the central area corridor, to have them adopt a resolution that would limit these vehicles from being ridden on private property. Mm-hmm. And again, the idea behind this, especially in places like Clark Commons, is to keep them out of areas where there's a lot of vehicular traffic, and also to keep large groups from congregating, because that's something that happens in other towns where groups of 30, 40, 50 kids will get together and ride into these private properties. And if they're not allowed on the private properties and there's no
prohibition,
well, there's no reason for them to come down to the commons, so it'll hopefully limit the numbers that we see on our roads and keep these large groups and even small groups of youths from congregating in these areas, because we all know it, anybody who has kids know, when kids get together in large groups, they do things that they wouldn't do if they're by themselves, and a lot of times they can be on the more dangerous side. So if we can keep the large groups from congregating in there and keep these vehicles from being ridden in these busy parking lots, we hopefully can cut down on the accidents.
Yeah, and imagine it would affect even commercial areas or parking lots such as, at L'Oreal.
Absolutely.
Kerry, some, where the apartments are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, we're going to start with the more well-known businesses that we know we have an issue with, but if any business owner is interested and would like to become a part of that, they can always come over here, speak with the business administrator, and they can look to have a resolution drafted where they can be added into the ordinance, so that way they can be
And I assume
covered.
that we'll have signage?
Yes, there would be signage up there. We will publicize on our Facebook page and our different social media outlets where these locations are in conjunction with the town and other media outlets in the area, so people know.
So tell me a little bit about how the officers are going to be made aware of everything and how they're going to handle interactions that they encounter in the community.
So with our juvenile bureau, we developed a 3-phase approach to this. So the first phase was to adopt an ordinance, which we've done. And this is what we're doing now as part of the second phase, which is to get the word out there. So our juvenile officers within the next, I'd say, month are going to be going into our schools, Kumpf and the high school, and speaking with the students and letting them know about what can be written, what can't be written. So to educate them about what the laws regarding this are, to inform them of this ordinance here, places that they're not supposed to be riding them. And then the third phase of it is going to be enforcement. So enforcement, we've already put forth an order at the police department that we want to make sure that all of these calls are handled thoroughly, that if we get calls about people operating these vehicles, that we are going to thoroughly investigate them through our patrol division, and that if people, regardless of their age, are operating these in an unsafe manner or not following these rules, that they are either given a warning or given a summons. Now, the one thing we added into the ordinance too that gives it a little bit of teeth is that if you do get one of these summonses, regardless of your age, there is a court appearance required. So if you're stopped, whether you're 12 or 20 and you're riding one of these vehicles in a dangerous manner, or you're not wearing your helmet, or you're not following anything that's in the ordinance, there's going to be a court appearance required for it. We have to come down in person in court and see the judge on it.
And I think, people are going to see, or they do see this occurring. Most important, before you post on social media, please call the police department first and make them aware of it so they can go out and do exactly what you said.
Absolutely. We see, I see the posts on social media. Call us, let us know in a timely manner. If it's 5 minutes in the past, 10 minutes in the past, it's a lot of times not helpful because people move, they're already out of the area, we can't locate them. What people should try to do is just call as soon as they see it, let us go out there, let us investigate it, let us check into it. If you're having issues with these being left in your neighborhood or left on sidewalks, the ordinance also says that these vehicles can't be parked or abandoned on the sidewalk, so residents can feel free to call us about that. I would encourage them to talk, if it's their neighbors, if you can talk with your neighbors first before you get the police involved. Say, hey, could you, if you know it's your neighbors that their kids are leaving it there, could you ask the kids to, not leave them on the sidewalk? But they can always call us and we'll always go out and take a look at it. That hasn't been much of an issue, but we put it in there in case it does come up.
Okay, so when they call, should they call 911? Should they call the police department?
It depends. I never want to say don't call 911 because if you see someone doing something that is dangerous and it's an emergency, you should call 911. People are going to have to use their best judgment on that. If they think it's an emergency and they need, we're going to get there quick no matter what. But if they think it's an emergency, they should call 911. If it's not an emergency, then they can always use the main number 732-388-3434, and it's option 1, which gets them right to the dispatch center.
So as far as penalties, you mentioned an appearance in court at a minimum. What are some of the other penalties that would be imposed? So
the fines along with this are all $100. So everything that's in the ordinance is $100. If you were found, if you were adjudicated guilty, it would be a $100 fine and a mandatory court appearance.
Okay. So you mentioned sometimes you might get a warning. So how does that work? Is there a grace period about with the warnings? How does it work? How is it documented?
it in essence functions just like a traffic stop of any other vehicle. Just like if you got stopped by the police for speeding, the officer has discretion. He could write you a warning. He could give you a verbal warning. He could, in this case, write
The officers, right?
the officers. Yeah. In this case, the officer could write the state statute. They could write the township ordinance. They could write both. It's completely up to the officer.
Okay, so I guess we've touched upon what citizens should do if they see someone violating the ordinance. You know, call the police department, report it. How does this affect people who already have scooters and motorized vehicles? And
They should follow it just like if they didn't have, and when they were buying a new one. Just because you have it already doesn't mean that it doesn't fall, under this.
no grandfathering?
No,
of that.
no, there's no grandfather or anything like that. And again, if parents have already bought these and they're not sure what it falls under, they can reach out. Feel free. They can wheel it into our lobby down there at the police department. We could take a look at it and tell you, what it would fall under.
Excellent.
Yeah,
That's great. Just come down and get the
have it
item
looked at.
inspected.
Yeah. Can't promise that they're going to like what the answer is, because I think in some cases that these parents have unintentionally bought their child a moped, which they cannot legally ride, but at least they'll know.
Well, in that regard, I guess they should really, if they're going to buy one, they can come down and talk to you
They
about
can do
it.
that too.
Bring pictures, a
Even if
summary of the item.
If they don't want to come down, they can email us. If they want to send an email, if they
Send
want
a
to call the
picture of
desk
the
and
model.
ask, hey, this is what I bought. This is what it is. Can you give me the traffic officer's email? We'll provide that, and they can email the traffic officer, and we'll take a look at it and let them know exactly what it is that they're looking at or that they purchased.
So, again, can you just summarize some of the educational programs or materials that we're putting out
Yes.
to the public?
So we are going to, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. This is going to be a fluid process. So we're started here with this video. We're going to have the program in the schools. We're then going to put this out on our Facebook, on the township Facebook, on the school district is going to put it out through their email server. We will continue to work with developing materials over the next couple of years, whether it's handouts, things to go out to the kids at the beginning of the year, through our juvenile bureau that can be given to them so they can take a look at, so they can be given to the students at the beginning of the year or throughout the year, so they have a reference to go off of. We want to make sure that we keep this conversation going, because every year, kids get older, and the new crop of parents who this wasn't an issue for and now becomes an issue for, and some parents don't realize that it even is an issue, and if we don't keep talking about it, they're not gonna realize that. So we want to make sure that we keep the conversation out there, that we keep publicizing this and let people know that they need to be educated consumers and look into what they're buying before they buy it.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to cover that I didn't ask you about?
No, I don't think so. I think the main thing, if there's one thing to take away from this, that if you're riding it, or you bought it for your child, or you're thinking about buying it, and it doesn't have pedals, you should think of it as a moped or a motorcycle. That's the one thing to take away from it. No pedals. You should really be looking into what it is that you're buying, because it for sure is going to need to have an insurance and registration and be treated like a moped or a motorcycle. And if parents should think to themselves, if this was labeled or branded as a moped or a motorcycle, would I buy it for somebody, for my child? Are they ready for that? And I think that's the main question people should ask themselves.
If you're just tuning in, we've been talking about the ordinance regarding motorized bicycles and scooters. And I want to thank you, Captain
Thank you, Mayor.
Lott.
It was good to meet
It's
with
been
you.
a pleasure.
Likewise.
And we'll be hearing more about this program as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you.